Alright. um, yeah, one more turn. Fucking, my mind went blank then. Part two, innit? Extraordinary until proven otherwise. This actually has been fascinating, even though I've heard this story, but still, it's still fascinating. A lot. Well, actually, I've heard one part of the story. Basically, I didn't know about all the other people that saw things over a course of a week. That's crazy. But the USS Theodore Roosevelt encounters. Let's go. Oh, that's that.
The second and third videos were recorded off the southeastern coast of the United States in early 2015. While those who recorded the footage have yet to come forward, some of their crewmates and fellow pilots have, and according to them, the story goes like this. In the summer of 2014, a naval strike group led by the aircraft carrier the USS Theodore Roosevelt was conducting pre-deployment exercises somewhere off the coast of Virginia. Much like with the Nimitz encounters, the first sign of trouble came in the form of anomalous radar tracks. Following a fleet-wide upgrade of aircraft radar systems, pilots had begun to pick up unidentified targets while conducting routine training missions. The tracks were initially dismissed as false positives, but their behavior was unlike anything they had seen before. Gravity-defying maneuvers, hypersonic velocities, and other mystifying shenanigans. Attempts to intercept these UFOs were initially unsuccessful. Lieutenant Danny Acoin claims that on 2 separate occasions he tried but failed to make visual contact. Then, one day, a squadron is said to have narrowly avoided a mid-air collision with one of these UFOs. The 2 jets had been flying in tandem, no more than a few tens of meters apart, when something flew right in between them. That something was oddly described as a cube encased by a translucent sphere. Lieutenant Ryan Graves, who spoke to one of the pilots once they had landed, claims the experience had visibly spooked them. So much so, the squadron filed an official safety report. According to Graves, this was far from an isolated incident. These UFOs were allegedly seen by dozens of pilots for several months and could remain airborne for up to 12 hours at a time. Yet, despite growing concerns among the Roosevelt crew, training missions continued as if nothing was amiss. By early 2015, the Roosevelt strike group had made its way down to the coast of Florida, which is when the 2 now famous videos were recorded, both of which are said to be short clips taken from much longer and higher resolution footage. We don't know much about the circumstances as the officers involved have chosen to remain silent, but let's take a look at the first one.
Don't blame them.
Dude, there's a going on, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is an LNS, dude. Well, if there's like... Look at that thing. It's rotating.
So, there are a few things to unpack in this one. If we ignore the audio for a moment and focus solely on the visuals, the thing that immediately stands out is the apparent rotation of the UFO. I use the word apparent because some debunkers claim that this rotation is an optical illusion. You see, the Atflare pod is equipped with something known as a derotation mechanism. It's meant to counteract the rotation of the camera so that the orientation of the image stays the same, also known as image stabilization. What may not be stabilized, however, are certain artifacts produced by the lens of the camera. You can even try this yourself. Aim a camera towards a light source, rotate the camera, stabilize the footage, and there you go. The orientation of the image is preserved while these spokes of light rotate along with the camera. So much like how the light from this light bulb is producing a lens flare, the infrared radiation from this UFO is said to be producing a lens glare.
How do you debunk the military, though? Aren't UFO debunkers just kind of grasping at straws here? It's like, bruv, I'm a fighter pilot. You're a UFO debunker. I fly around all the time. I see shit all the time. I know what shit is. I know what it isn't. Why are you telling me that this is fake when... So what? UFO debunkers are now debunking the American military.
In other words, debunkers claim it is the camera and thereby the glare which is rotating, not the UFO itself. While this explanation seems perfectly reasonable to my untrained eyes, things get a bit more confusing once we bring back the audio.
It's rotating.
Well, if there's like a thing, it's rotating.
If this rotation is merely the result of image stabilization, why would the two pilots fail to recognize it as such? Surely they, if anyone, would know what that looks like. And they're not alone. Both Lieutenant Graves and Acoin believe it is the UFO which is rotating. Furthermore, an expert on the ATFLIR system has very plainly stated that this is not an optical illusion. But this is not the only puzzling comment made by the two pilots.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west.
So the radar is supposedly detecting a whole fleet of UFOs, which are all traveling crosswind. I mean, if what we're looking at is something prosaic, like the blooming exhaust of a jet engine, these comments don't make a whole lot of sense. I would love to hear what these two pilots have to say if they ever decide to come forward. Until then, all we can do is speculate.
I saw that.
Tango 6-1, Tango Roger, Roger. Oh, got it! Woohoo! Roger, there's troubleshooting as soon as I get Did you box moving target? 02. No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at that, man. Look at it fly!
This video may seem very striking at first, but it is arguably the least interesting of the three. Once again, let's ignore the audio for a moment and focus solely on the visuals. Unlike the previous two, the UFO in this one is colder than its surroundings, so the ocean below is radiating more heat than whatever this is. It may look as though the UFO is traveling at high speed, but this is likely the result of parallax. In short, aircraft go fast, camera fixed on not so fast UFO appear to go fast. Some say the UFO is near sea level and therefore the parallax explanation doesn't work, but we can actually derive its altitude using the numbers on screen and find that that is not true. Everything seen in this video is consistent with a balloon or some sort of debris floating in the wind. The commentary by the pilots, however, does once again introduce a bit of confusion. I mean, it seems odd for the pilots to be so excited over something so mundane, but without hearing from the pilots themselves, we can do nothing but speculate. The person responsible for making these videos available to the public is a man named Lou Elizondo. Beginning in 2008, Elizondo was the head of a secret government-funded effort to investigate UFO sightings known as the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. By late 2017, however, Elizondo had grown so disillusioned with the government's lack of interest in the program's efforts that he decided to resign. In his resignation letter, Elizondo writes that certain individuals within the government are staunchly opposed to UFO research, that inflexible mindsets and political contention essentially prevented him from doing his job. He portrays the government as virtually unconcerned about an issue which he believes could pose a threat to national security, so much so that he felt it necessary to resign in protest. This seemingly uncaring attitude was also noted by witnesses of both the Nimitz and Roosevelt encounters. For instance, Lieutenant Ryan Graves recalled how the commander of the Roosevelt strike group seemed completely unfazed by this video. On the day when it was captured, he supposedly looked at it for 5 seconds then walked away without saying a word. Some of the senior officers on board the Nimitz and Princeton are said to have had an equally muted response. These are very bizarre reactions to potential airspace incursions. You'd think they'd want to make sure these UFOs are not some kind of threat. The near mid-air collision reported by one of the squadrons from the Roosevelt seems especially concerning. To account for this apparent disinterest, many point to the severe stigma surrounding the topic of UFOs. Regardless of how inaccurate it may be, the term UFO has, for many, become synonymous with aliens and spaceships. So much so, the government now favors the term UAP, specifically to avoid this unwanted association. Whether sightings go unreported or uninvestigated, the argument is that people choose to look the other way because they're concerned about their reputation. No one wants to be seen as a nutcase and potentially lose out on a promotion. Others believe there could be something a bit more conniving at play, that no serious action is taken because a highly advanced and top-secret drone program is responsible for the sightings. Even some of the witnesses have entertained that possibility. For instance, Sean Cahill, who was the chief master at arms on board the Princeton, perceived the inaction of senior staff as a clear sign that the UFOs were known military assets. But as previous mentioned, it is difficult to believe such radical innovation could have taken place in absolute secrecy. We're talking about such advanced technology it would barely make sense in a science fiction novel. Vehicles that can exceed the speed of sound without producing any sonic booms. Vehicles that can drop or climb to virtually any altitude in a matter of seconds. Vehicles that can violently change direction of travel as if inertia was a mere suggestion. None of that should be possible, yet dozens of trained observers claim they witnessed the impossible. The least uncomfortable solution, therefore, is to simply not believe them. Sure, the witnesses are credible, but they're not incontrovertible. Everything from optical illusions to faulty equipment could be used to cast doubt on their extraordinary tales. And without any corroborating evidence, except for this nebulous footage, that is not a difficult task. As such, many government officials may not seem concerned because they genuinely believe there is nothing to be concerned about. Personally, I'm left feeling very conflicted. On the one hand, I find the witness accounts quite compelling. On the other, I find this grainy trilogy of dots in the sky somewhat underwhelming. Sure, the videos are fascinating, but they're also far too ambiguous to provide any decisive answers. I highly recommend that you seek out and listen to some of the witness accounts so that you can judge for yourself. This is very much a developing situation. By the time you watch this video, chances are more information will have been released. According to Elizondo, the Nimitz and Roosevelt encounters are just the tip of the iceberg. Sightings by military personnel are said to be commonplace, it's just that we rarely hear about them. I can only hope that more evidence is released in the near future and that at least one video depicts something inexplicable. Something that is unidentified because it defies explanation, not because it's too distant, too small, or otherwise too obscure. No, but something truly extraordinary. That's what I want to see.
But see, I mean, yeah, we all want to see that, to be fair. We all do want to see something. But I do think that, because it was these, watching them talk on Joe Rogan. I have watched Joe Rogan podcasts of them talking. And like you said, I can't remember which one it was that was on Joe Rogan talking. But he said about the one where it's just above the sea. And they're trying to say it's a bird. But then he's like, well, it can't be because it's colder than the sea. Like, there's no heat coming off of it. And that's another thing what Bob Lazar said about it, is that they have technology which burns energy without heating up. So that's why, yeah, you have to kind of go into all these people's statements and you can see things that add up. And I mean, you can say people try and discredit Bob Lazar, but he fucking, what's it, 115? Element 115? He was talking about that like in the 80s, and it didn't get truly discovered until the 2000s at some point. Um, but I think, um, I believe them pilots. The only thing that would make me not is to think that there's a bigger conspiracy going on. That, I don't know, they want to, I don't know, fake an alien invasion. Um, because we had one at a military base and it shut down the missiles. And plus, you've had them reported all through the Second World War too, pilots saying that they saw things, which I suppose you could argue, but then even not, because if you're a pilot, you know what shit is, you know what you're looking at, and you know what you're not. Like, yeah. I kind of find it a little bit arrogant to like just say, oh, for a UFO debunker to try and throw shit towards pilots. Pilots are like, and the other thing is as well is if you watch them on Joe Rogan, they can sit and talk about it for 3.5 hours or 2 hours or whatever, and that's when you know, like, you see someone's not, what they think doesn't fall down with a few questions. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, that was interesting. I definitely want to do more UFO stuff. Um, but yeah, that's the reaction. Sweet.